Okay. What are some other tools we can use? You know what's interesting is that trying to find the tools that you can use on just like mobile and making them available on Studio. We're going to be responding to Robert Reich first. Got to respond to Robert Reich first. Got to respond. Responding. Going to be responding to political videos. This is Robert Reich talking about how Trump is basically a king now. He's a king because he can fire bureaucrats that were whatever in charge of these independent executive agencies. And it's kind of the end of the world where we live in an empire now, apparently, according to Robert Reich. The funny thing, I find this stuff hilarious. I just find it funny. Anywho, we're going to get going on this in a minute. What I'm trying to figure out here is how to do, let me see something like this. Let me see something here. Let me see. Why is that not working? There we go. Let's do this. Let's see. How does this work? I don't know how things work. What's the poll, though? How do I put the questions in? I don't understand this. I don't understand. What? I hate when I don't know how stuff works. I was going to try and put a poll up to see how people felt about the SCOTUS decisions that came down. So I'm hitting the poll and gift thing here. So I go quick poll, give them two options. Like I'm trying to figure out if there's how do I create the topic of the poll on the quick poll thing here? That's weird. This is really, really kind of weird. But anyway, I guess it doesn't matter. We're going to be doing Robert Reich here in just a minute, and his take on the Supreme Court rulings, particularly the ruling regarding the president can now fire with impunity members of these independent government organizations, which means he can fire a member of the FTC and the NSLRB, all these different executive agencies that have been created. The president can now fire people associated in these agencies, and it's like terrifying because it's an imperial presidency and Donald Trump has too much power. And so it's pretty terrifying stuff, apparently. I think it's funny. My perspective on this is that it's a little bit funny to view it that way. I guess my thought would be these are the same people who said they didn't want to be ruled by unelected bureaucrats being mad that now somebody can fire these unelected bureaucrats. Am I crazy with that take? That seems like the take to me. Is that, yeah, I don't like Donald Trump, but at least somebody can now, at least now there's some level of accountability for these politicians or for these bureaucrats. There's some executive oversight of these agencies. These are the same people. There's the same people who are upset about like Elon Musk and I don't want to be governed by some unelected bureaucrat. It's like, all these people that Trump can fire in these executive agencies and these independent regulatory bodies. These are all unelected bureaucrats who essentially make all the rules that you have to live by and engage in business with. That's who these people are. So it seems a little odd to me that people are so upset. Over this ruling, it seems to be a pretty logical ruling to me. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, I guess if you don't want to be governed by bureaucrats, don't you want then the executive branch to be able to hold these independent agencies responsible or accountable, or who controls once Congress creates and funds them? And by the way, Congress could eliminate them through legislative action, and they can defund them through legislative action, but they won't. Congress isn't going to do that. Okay, Congress creates these regulatory bodies outside of the authority for the last 100 years, outside the authority of the president, with really only their own oversight. Okay. Which is nothing because they're never going to defund these organizations because they created them. The issue here is to understand why they created these organizations. They created these organizations so they can focus on getting reelected and don't have to worry about the actual work of governing the country. We'll create an agency and we will give them the power to set the rules and do all the things that we, as your elected officials, are supposed to be doing. And that way we don't have to do it, and we can spend 70% of our time getting reelected. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that we need to sunset any regulation that is punishable by being fined or having your license taken away, right? If you don't follow this regulation, we are going to make it illegal for you to do business, or we're going to take your money, right? Any regulation with that power should have a 4-year sunset period. And if Congress doesn't pass it into law, I'd say even 2 years, because you have House elections every 2 years. Every one of these regulations has a 2-year sunset period. And if Congress thinks it's important enough to make it a law, let them make it a law. And if they don't, then it's not a regulation anymore. It could still be a regulation, but it doesn't come with the threat of revocation of licensure or seizure of property, because it's not a law. Congress didn't pass this as a law. We need to take back control of our economic system, of our governance. And the first way we do that is by saying the people that we elected are the ones who actually have to govern us, not these agencies. They can't be derelict in their duty. And if they want to make a bunch of rules, they have to put their name on it and then go back and answer to it to their constituents. That's how easy this. That's a major repair of the political system. But let's listen to what Mr. Robert Reich has to say about it.
The Federal Trade Commission about how they could best protect Americans from monopolies.
Let me back this up
and
here.
Deceptive. My friends, as of today, America's independent regulatory agencies are no longer independent.
Bum, bum, bum. We shouldn't have independent regulatory agencies. That's not, but this isn't communist Russia where we have the Politburo that sets all these rules. We elect our officials to make the rules, to pass the laws of the land. Now you can have independent agencies responsible for enforcing congressional laws and making sure they're being abided by. But these independent regulatory agencies, they're not your elected officials. When Elon Musk was going to do Doge and everybody was in an uproar, like, I don't want to be governed by some unelected bureaucrat. These were all unelected bureaucrats. That's who these people are. So what are we talking about here? Who are they accountable to? You elected your congresspeople to represent you, but they're not making the rules. They're spending 70% of their time trying to get reelected, and they're derelict in their duties, and they're offloading this responsibility to unelected bureaucrats whose names you don't even know. And they're the ones who are setting the rules.
Trump and future presidents can now replace all of their commissioners and board members with political hacks.
That's true. So here's what Congress should do. Congress should go and defund these organizations and then reassert themselves as the actual governing body over the country. And then they have to do things that they have the power to do based on the enumerated powers of the Constitution. Because that's right, all these agencies can now be filled with hacks. They've always been able to fill with hacks. It's just going to be the turnover is just going to be faster now, right? That's the only difference. The turnover is just going to be faster. And so the economy just got more unstable, okay? Because now we can just fire, none of these rules, regulations, none of this stuff matters anymore, because every new administration can come in and fire these people and hire all new people who set a whole new set of, so the economy just became very unstable. Do you know how you stabilize that? Congress reasserts its authority, because it's hard and slow for Congress to do things, which is what the founders intended. They didn't want the federal government doing a bunch of different things. It was designed to be difficult to do things at the federal level. That was the whole point of how this whole system was set up, is that they didn't want the federal government doing a lot of things.
I spent 5 years of my life advising the commissioners of the Federal Trade Commission about how they could best protect Americans from monopolies and deceptive corporate practices. I'm proud of the work the Federal Trade Commission did then.
I'm proud of the work too. Here's the best way to protect the American people against monopolies. It's called competition. It's called the free market. Stop printing money. They're mad about Elon Musk being a trillionaire. Stop printing money. You printed him into existence by dumping trillions of dollars of new money into the economy year after year after year and artificially inflating asset prices. You created the trillionaire. You're creating the monopolies. The fact that these guys have access to all this cheap money first that you're dumping into the economy is what allows them to accumulate more and more assets. So a guy has a good idea, he becomes incredibly wealthy and builds a company, right? In a stable currency environment where we're not just printing tons of new money every year, there's a lid to how far he's going to grow and how fast he can do it. And there's a risk associated with actual normal interest rates of him acquiring and growing and getting bigger, which slows him down when he gets to a certain level and allows competition to start seeping into the marketplace. But if you just print a ton of money and put him really close to the money printer, and so he can accumulate $1 trillion worth of assets and borrow against that, then you've created the monopoly that you are trying to protect people. Freedom will protect you from the monopolies. Sorry, that's just the way it works.
And proud of much of what it's accomplished ever since then. Part of the reason the FTC has been so effective is that it is, or was, independent and therefore immune to the political moves of powerful corporations seeking to stop it from acting.
Because the FTC, see, here's what the bureaucrats and these regulatory body worshipers like this ding dong, here's what they fail to understand. Those agencies and the people that are in charge of them, they're corruptible too. I don't know if you know this or not, but government appointees can be corrupted. They can take bribes. They can do bad things. They're not perfect people. There's no special like, oh, this person's the head of the FTC, so they're benevolent, and all the department heads and all the people in charge of all these different entities within the FTC and within the NSR, all these different agencies, all these people are uncorruptible, benevolent people, and they'll protect you. They are not impacted by the influence of money. No. They're perfect because they're government. Corporations are evil because they work for profit. Government's good. So what we don't want is for any level of real oversight to take place within these entities that make all the rules. We don't want any oversight. We don't want any control over these entities. They should be completely independent and do what they want because we can completely trust these agencies to be 100% upright and forthright. And these are people are benevolent and competent. The idea that there should be some oversight over them is absolutely, that's crazy. What are you even thinking here?
For the common good. Unfortunately, we now have a president and a Supreme Court who are in their pockets. Hence today's Supreme Court ruling that a president can disregard the will of Congress and install his own hacks in all previously independent regulatory agencies.
The will of Congress is to get reelected. You understand? The will of Congress is to do everything they can to not govern and spend their time raising money and getting reelected. That's the will of Congress. So instead of Congress going out and doing their job, which is making the rules, writing the laws, and doing the things they're supposed to do, they create these agencies, hand them massive budgets, and then it's a hands-off thing. Here. Pop quiz. Name 10 people in the FTC. Name 10 people in the Federal Trade Commission. Tell me how many employees are in the FTC. Does anybody know how many employees are in the FTC without looking it up? Tell me what specifically the FTC does. Not like they are, they blah, 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 blah. But what is their specific role within the government? No, people don't know this stuff. This is just an agency. You maybe, if you're super engaged in politics, you might know who the head of the FTC is. These are shadow agencies. Even though all the information is public, I understand that. People don't have time to... I can say that representative supported that law and I don't like it and I'm going to vote against them. Now, what can I do when the FTC passes a regulation that I don't like? What happens when the NLSRB, National Labor Board, whatever. What am I going to do when the FDA passes a regulation I don't agree with? Or the USDA? What do I do? What's my recourse as a voter? How far away am I from that rulemaker or who's governing the economy? Where's my representation come from? So I have to vote for a representative who's going to do what? Go and strip them of their power somehow in Congress against the other, these agencies shouldn't exist. Maybe as an enforcement of laws that Congress writes, but not as the rulemakers in our economy. And they shouldn't. And if they're going to be the rule makers of our economy, somebody needs to have direct oversight. Some elected official should have direct oversight over them. I don't understand why this is so. I honestly, I don't understand why this is so controversial. These people make the rules about how our economy functions. They are unelected and largely unsupervised. Why shouldn't an elected official have oversight of them?
Agencies. Most of the current justices subscribe to a bonkers theory called the unitary executive theory. The notion that the framers intended for a president to have total control over every aspect of the executive.
So this is a, oh, I'm gonna let him finish.
Look, it's a bonkers theory because of all the things the framers of the Constitution worried about, their biggest worry was that a president would become as powerful as a king.
That is true. He's accurate there. They were also concerned that the central government, there's a reason. See, here's something they don't talk about a lot. There's a reason we started this country with the Articles of Confederation. If you understand the Articles of Confederation, you understand how afraid they were not just of an imperial president, but of a overly powerful central government in general. That's why we started out with the Articles of Confederation. They made a governmental system that made the federal government virtually incapable of doing anything. Too much so. So weak that it wasn't going to be able to hold the Union together. And there was a great amount of debate as to whether or not they were going to grant the federal government the enumerated powers in the Constitution, because they were so afraid of an overly powerful central government. So these guys like to talk about the framers and the founders and so on and so forth, but only in view of the president and only when it's a president they don't like, right? I want to see, here's what I'm going to promise you. Nobody's going to complain when the Democrat, when it's President Newsom in 2028 and he starts firing appointees, people that Trump appointed. Nobody, not a single Democrat's going to complain about that. Not one. Not one Democrat's going to be like, this is terrible. We have an imperial presidency. Nobody's going to say that. Nobody's going to do it. And if this was President Kamala Harris, the Republicans would be losing their minds that she suddenly has this power. The reason we were afraid of a powerful central government is because we were afraid that the American people would be divided up into these two political parties and just not care and have zero principles as long as it was the party that they liked doing the thing, right? So this guy, when President Newsom gets elected in 2028, you will never hear him Reich complain about Newsom firing a bunch of political appointees. You will not see a reversal of this position through legislative action. The Democrats, if they get the majority of the House and Senate, are not going to try and create legislative action to reverse the Supreme Court decision. No, because they want their guy to have this power too. So when we talk about the founders and the framers, yes, they didn't want an imperial presidency, but they didn't want a particularly powerful federal government either. That's why they made it so hard for the federal government to do things. That's why the Senate was supposed to be selected by state legislators instead of by popular vote. The House was selected by popular vote to represent the people. The Senate was selected by the state legislatures to represent the state. All these regulatory agencies didn't exist. And the rules of the land, the law of the land, was passed by the U.S. House of Representatives within the enumerated powers of the Constitution. None of these people care about the Constitution. They just want to quote it and use it when it's convenient for them, when somebody they don't like is doing a thing they don't agree with.
What they did and what they were worried most about is limiting the power of a president. Congress
of the government. The problem is that these people love the government. So they're not interested in limiting governmental power. They're interested in limiting the presidential power of their political opponents.
Has by now established 19 independent regulatory agencies, including the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the National Labor Relations Board. I could go on and on. These independent agencies, staffed with experts, have become a major countervailing power to the political cloud of large corporations.
He says they're staffed with experts. I bet you he couldn't name 10 members of the FTC. Do you understand? Do you see what I'm getting at here? I bet you this guy's very dialed in to politics. I don't agree with him. I'm not arrogant enough to sit here and say he's stupid. I'm not going to do that. He's a very intelligent person. He's a very educated individual. I just don't agree with his political stances and his political position and what his view of the role of the federal government is. But he's not stupid. And I bet you he can't name 10 members of the FTC off the top of his head. Do you understand? Do you understand the issue that I'm talking about?
But as of today, they are no longer independent. Today's ruling overturns the basic idea, part of the fabric of our government for well over a century, that Congress has the power to create independent agencies. As the nation prepares to mark the 250th anniversary of our independence from a king, the Supreme Court and our current president are doing everything possible to resurrect a king in America.
Sure thing. Sure thing.
My friends, as of today,
I'll tell you this. One of the things that drives me nuts about politics in this country right now, one of the big issues that we have, is that we do too much stuff via executive order. Like way too much stuff is being done just via executive order. And then here's how we're governed. Here's how the United States is governed now. Okay. You have politicians, congressmen, senators, and their primary, what they predominantly do is try and get reelected. They put their name on really stupid bills that have no chance of passing, particularly in the during midterm season. They'll do a lot of that. Like, oh, I'm going to put my name on the, protect puppies from Muslim terrorists bill, right? If you're conservative, and I don't know what the Democrat equivalent. Oh, the tax billionaires and get buy everybody a unicorn bill. If you're a Democrat, that's pretty much what senators and Congress people do, especially during the midterms. And then they fundraise and do photo opportunities. That's the people that you elect to represent you in government. That's what they spend the majority of their time doing. That's what they're out there doing. Okay, they're not representing you, and they don't care about you. They care about getting reelected. The congresswoman that I'm running against in South Carolina's 3rd district posted, I think, like the day after the Maduro operation in Venezuela, that this was about fentanyl. Do you understand? These people they're not serious. They're not serious people. It's because they want to spend their time getting reelected and fundraising. They take their duty to establish the rules. They take that duty and they give it to somebody else so that they don't have to worry about doing the job you actually elected them to do. That's what's going on. That's essentially how you're being governed right now. So a bunch of unelected bureaucrats that you've never heard of are funded through Congress. They take your tax money. They give it to these agencies. These agencies have massive amounts of power. You don't know who these people are. They make all the rules. Okay. Congress doesn't supervise them. And when was the last time Congress decided to stop funding something? Right. So there's no risk of them being funded. They're not going to fire anybody. There's no executive authority. This is the Politburo. This is just a bunch of unknown bureaucrats behind the scenes making all the rules that you have to live by. And then when we assign when we create the idea that the president actually has the authority to oversee these executive agencies, by the way, it's a disaster. It's like the end of the world because these agencies are going to have oversight. Let's just get rid of the agencies altogether. So this is a little series that I was working on for a while with Robert Reich. I don't like this guy. I don't like this. One of the things I really don't like about this guy is that I am just a guy on the internet with a microphone. Okay, so you know what I mean. But he's not an economist. Like, it's an interesting thing, and people have referred to him. I've watched him be introduced on shows for interviews and stuff, where they introduce him as a economist, and he just goes along with it, and he just pretends. It's almost like he's pretending that he is in fact an economist. This guy really gets under my skin. He's done so little to dissuade the idea that he's an economist, that I thought he was an economist for a while myself.
Cause of the crisis we find ourselves in. He's a consequence. The last 5 decades have been marked by an explosion in wealth inequality and a growing distrust of America's institutions.
Here we go.
They go hand in hand. Many Americans
So he has this series he did
is rigged against them,
where he does like these 10 economic myths, and it's terrible.
this series of videos which debunk the most common and destructive myths about our economy. These myths make it
This is almost as
for us to
bad
have a real
as he has a wet dream tax increase video that he did. And it is crazy. Like the whole increase was $600 billion. And he just talked about all these things we could do with it. Never talked about the fact that we have a multi-trillion-dollar budget deficit. Just, hey, we just need to raise taxes and we could do all these things. Anyway, let's have a listen. This is the economic lie.
Objective science that has nothing to do with politics or morality. Bunk.
I like this one. This one's fun.
If you really want to understand the economy, you have to understand politics and also morality.
So, no, that's true. Economics is, whether you want to call it a theoretical science, and the interesting thing about economics as a theoretical science is that it is, because you can never prove, you can look back, but you can't predict future actions. You can experiment and pull levers, but you could test out different theories, but you can never holistically test out a theory, because you'll never be able to implement an entire economic plan as it designed, right? And test whether or not that thing works. The closest we've come is to implementing communism within communist nations. And you can't get there. You can't get into the implementation phase. It falls apart beforehand. So from a theoretical perspective, every attempt to duplicate the experiment of communism has failed so miserably they've led to humanitarian crises. But people want to keep running the experiment. It just doesn't work. You can't make it work. It's like, whatever. I'm trying to think about another science where it's like, we can't make this work. They say that you can make a car run on water or something like that, but let's pretend you can't make a car run on water, since we've never seen it happen. It's like, if we just keep trying, we'll get there. No, you won't get there. You're never going to get it right. It doesn't work. So morality is not something that you can plan for economically. It's not part of the thing.
Fields, separate disciplines. Each has its own experts and specialists, but the three are completely intertwined. In fact, through most of the 1800s, the field of study that we call economics was called political economy.
True story.
People who studied
that's true.
Saw that the two fields were the same.
They're not the same. There's a reason that people who study this eventually divorced the two things. You know what I mean? We used to think that the sun and the moon were gods. And then we figured out that the natural things that were happening around us that wasn't the case, that the sun and the moon didn't control those things. And so then we divorced what was happening in our environment from these celestial bodies. And we figured that, like, politics and economics are not the same thing. And eventually we figured it out.
Adam Smith, the Scotsman who wrote The Wealth of Nations in 1776, is considered the father of economics, especially by conservatives. But he never called himself an economist. He
Unlike Robert Reich, who's not an economist and does, in fact, call himself an economist.
called himself a moral philosopher. Why? Because he was really interested in the meaning of a good society. That's what it's all about, or should be all about. What sort of society do we want?
So this is, you know what? I don't even have to do this anymore. I can send this to the back now. What kind of society do we want? And then this is the ego. This is the ego that leads to humanitarian crises. What kind of society do we want? This is how you end up with 30 million people starving to death, because we think we can engineer this. The problem with economics in general, and economists in particular, is, and I am not an economist, but I've studied, I have studied. I've worked my way through a series of lectures on principles of economics, on the book. So I've gone through it to just get a basic understanding of actual like economic principles and how it's taught. And I got the guy. Maybe I'll share it with you in the comments. Anyway, there's a professor who goes and he'll work through this entire textbook, and you can follow his lecture series. You figure out pretty early on that it's so complicated that it can't be managed. But if you're an economist, right? I just spent 7 years getting my PhD, and now I have to go out and get a job. I either have to become a professor or I have to become an advisor. And if I'm going to become an advisor, I can't go very well say, well, there's really not much we can do about it except establish a fixed set of rules that everybody has to play by and then allow the market to function. Well, what do I need an economist for? If all that can happen is the free market's going to make these decisions, and the best thing to do is allow the free market to function. Economists wouldn't have a job. We wouldn't have economic advisors. We wouldn't need all these regulatory agencies. So many people's lives and well-being depends on the fact that we can somehow manage economic outcomes and create the moral outcomes we want by pulling the right economic levers. That if we just spoke the truth that, look, it's super complicated, we can't control this, the government has no power to create particular outcomes, and the best thing we could possibly do is create a sound means of exchange and allow the market to function, what the hell do we need any of you people for? Right? Well, there goes your 7-figure salary as a presidential advisor or an analyst. You know what I mean? There's, I guess not 7-figure salary, but you know what I mean? There goes your prestigious position. There goes your wealth. There goes your sense of identity, that you can predict and understand how these things are going to work. So the people who are advising and talking about creating managerial authority over the economy are doing so in their own, it starts with their own self-interest, because they have to put themselves out as experts who can advise how to get to a particular economic outcome, which is impossible. That in and of itself is impossible. The funny thing for me is that when you look at it from, like, I'm a libertarian, from a libertarian perspective, it's a political ideology of humility. Ron Paul said, I don't want to, nor do I know how to organize your life. These people don't want you to understand that they don't have the power to solve your problems, and they don't have the problem to manage society into a particular economic outcome. They just can't do it. It's impossible for them to do. And so they point to flaws in the economic system, a lot of times created by the state, and present themselves as the people who can solve those problems. And that's what they do. That's how they keep their jobs. And I can't help but think that there's some kind of an overlap between the people who genuinely believe, or not overlap, I should say. There is some degree of belief. Like, there's a certain percentage of them who genuinely believe it. But I think there's a far greater number of people who understand that they're snake oil salesmen. That's what they're actually just snake oil salesmen, and they cannot control these outcomes, and they know they can't control these outcomes, and they know they can't engineer their way to where they want to be. But they're going to try anyway. And that's, I don't know, I guess that's kind of just a little gross to me that they do that. But and so that's it. That's why it to some extent, it's like the members of Congress who are derelict in their duties and are not trying to actually govern. Or maybe I should have a little bit more respect for them. At least they're acknowledging the fact that, look, the best thing I could do is just get myself reelected, because there's nothing really else I can do. That can't really impact economic outcomes or solve any of these problems. So I might as well just focus on getting reelected. We'll turn it over to these agencies. But at the end of the day, every time we intervene and prevent the market from just functioning as a free market, every time we do that, we just make things worse. My viewership got really small because there were a bunch of communists in here trolling me, but I wouldn't bring them up, and so they all left. It's a weird thing. Like, I think I have to start debating on here a little bit. I don't like it. I don't want to. Would I rather just stay like these tiny little lives where I know the people who are in here and not care about growing at all? Or should I start debating? I don't know. Anyway, let's see if we can find another interesting, what time is it? And let's see if we can find another interesting video to review here. Let's see. Paying out of what sort of society? It's just this. I can't get over it. I can't get over the fundamental belief that we can actually manage the economy. This is. Let's see what the doom loop is. I do these live. I've not seen these. So
Republican doom loop once again. Let's walk through it. Republicans get into office, often fueled by the perception that the Democrats aren't doing enough to help everyday Americans. Then Republicans get to work, slashing taxes for the super rich and cutting spending on programs that millions of Americans rely on.
The biggest problem with the Republican economic agenda, cutting taxes is great, by the way. Ending these programs is great. The problem with the Republicans is they don't balance the budget. They don't get out of control spending and money printing in hand to bring down inflation and to allow prices to naturally adjust to the increases in productivity brought along by technological advances. So they don't make life more, they don't do anything to make life more affordable. They don't deregulate the economy typically. And if they do, it's like President Trump's deregulation right now, where it's like mostly by executive order. Deregulating the economy via executive order, it has zero value. So all these like EPA regulations he's rolled back by executive order, none of it matters. Nobody's going to invest based on that. Nobody with a long-term timeline, somebody with the wealth to invest in a way that actually impacts the economy, none of those people are going to invest based on a change made by executive order. Because there's not enough long enough timeline before the next guy gets into office and can change that back. If you're going to make changes to the economic system, then you have to make those changes via legislation. If you're going to make, and this is what I mean by saying that this is the dereliction of congressional powers, that the EPA shouldn't be making these rules. If they want to enforce rules made by Congress, that's the one thing, but they shouldn't be making these rules because they can change too fast. They can change administration to administration. This should all be done through legislation so that there's certainty and stability in the economy. And that is what spurs investment. You can have really strict environmental regulations and still have economic growth. You just have to make sure that the regulations are kind of going to, that I can count that the rules of the game are going to stay the same over an extended period of time. That's what creates these guys who create wealth. They're smarter than government. The government's going to throw roadblocks in their way, and they're going to figure out, and good or bad. I don't care what your perception is of the rules, good or bad. They're going to do their thing. And these guys then will figure out how to navigate that system, create the right investments so that they can produce goods and services so they can make money and you can get what you want. That's how the system's supposed to work. But if the rules change every 4 years, I can't navigate that system. I can't bring a bunch of capital to bear on the economic system and try and make things better or create new products and bring new goods and services to market because I don't know if my multi-million-dollar investment, or in some cases multi-billion-dollar investment, is going to pay off because the rules make it null and void within the next 4 years. This is why things need to be done through legislation, not through these bureaucratic monstrosities that are created by Congress. Congress needs to make these rules and do their freaking job and stop outsourcing their responsibilities and stop focusing 70% of their time on getting reelected. The economy collapses under Republicans. Okay.
Sometimes Republican presidents start wars in the Middle East.
Because no Democrat. Come on, man. This is my problem with an intelligent person like Robert Reich. This is my problem with somebody like him. It's like he knows he's a partisan hack. Did he criticize Obama? I'd like somebody show me a video of him criticizing Obama with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. Right? This is just America elects, take a Republican out of here. America elects a president. Party institutes their economic agenda. The economy struggles. America elects new president. Rules change. America, you know what I mean? This is the problem. It's this inconsistency.
Reagan, George W., and Trump all gave massive tax breaks to the rich and big corporations. But their administrations were marked by lousy job markets, exploding national debt, and slow economic growth.
One of the things they do here, and I've done the George W. Bush thing, where I've gone back and looked at like the unemployment numbers and the biggest thing, it was the tax revenue after the tax cuts. People don't talk about this. They're like, oh, George W. Bush blew a hole in the economy and created all this debt. It's not true. He created all this debt by not cutting spending and signing Medicare Part D into law, creating these massive government enterprises, taking us to war. Those things exploded the debt. The tax cuts didn't do it. Revenue after Bush's tax cuts, not only did revenue go up significantly after the tax cuts, but the percentage paid by the top also increased. So not only did revenues climb, and you can go to the IRS website and look at this, not only did tax revenue go up after his tax cuts, but the percentage paid by the people at the top also went up. They paid a higher percentage where people at the bottom paid a lower percentage of the overall revenue, and the overall revenue increased. And you can just go to the IRS website. You can go to treasury.gov and look at that and look where his tax cuts came in right up until obviously, 9/11, whatever, but you could just see it. It's all right there. So it's not true. Spending leads to massive deficits. Anyway.
Classic trickle-down hoax.
It actually worked exactly like it was supposed to. The economy did grow. Everybody got wealthier. But because we didn't reduce spending, we printed more money. And so further down you went, the further away from the money printer you are, the less you felt the impact of a growing and prosperous economy. We need to get spending in order. We can't keep freaking printing unlimited amount of money every year. That you just can't do it.
Millions of people who were already hurting ended up even worse off. So they voted in a Democratic president. The Democrats came in with a big job to do. Clinton had to clean up after years of trickle-down nonsense from Reagan and H.W.
So here's this is another thing that bothers me, is like the phrase trickle-down. There's no such thing as trickle-down economics. It's a pejorative created to denigrate supply-side economics. And supply-side economics isn't about big tax cuts. It's about making it as easy as possible to create things, to be productive in the economy. Supply side says that essentially bringing innovation into the marketplace is what actually creates economic growth through wealth creation. And that process creates wealth that gets distributed throughout the economy. And I can give you a great example of it. Jeff Bezos is hoarding his wealth. Amazon's worth $2.4 trillion. He's only worth 1/10. Only 1/10 of the overall value of his company. That's what his net worth is. They never express it to you that way, do they? They never say, I can't believe Jeff Bezos, who founded Amazon, has a value that is 1/10 the value of his company. Nobody's gonna say that. Nobody's gonna find that unreasonable. And that over $2 trillion of the wealth created by Amazon is spread out through the economy. I own some Amazon. You probably own some Amazon. A lot of investors own Amazon. There's $2 trillion of Amazon stock out there that Jeff Bezos doesn't own. That's wealth in other people's hands, millions of people's hands. So that's supply side economics. Supply side economics says we're going to create new wealth through innovation. And many people will be able to take advantage of that. Not to mention the fact that the idea that you can get anything you want delivered to your house came out of that innovation. The fact that Walmart, Target, all these different places, DoorDash, Uber, all of these things are kind of built off of the Amazon model, the e-commerce model of get on your phone. And obviously at the time of when Amazon was just an online bookstore, this wasn't even, this wasn't anything that we even thought about. But get on this box that connects to this internet, and you can just order whatever you want and have it delivered to your house. That model, what's the value of that model during the pandemic? What is the economic value of people being able to stay in their homes and order things and just have it delivered, not having to go out? That's an interesting question. Anyway.
Bush. I was there. Obama stabilized the economy after the financial meltdown under George W. Bush.
So this is another problem. I can't even get through one of these videos. I got to stop it every 2 seconds. They're so stacked with half-truths and lies. Yes, there was a housing crisis under George W. Bush. There was. No question about it. Structurally, that economic meltdown had been building for over 50 years. HUD, the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the fact that we're going to have FHA loans, everybody deserves to own a home, all of these programs that were designed to push people with poor credit who weren't ready to buy a house, who shouldn't have access to these sophisticated long-term loans. Structurally, that system had been building for 50 years, and it came to a head. It came to a head under George W. Bush. Was it his fault? No. Did he do something to prevent it? No. But it came to a head under George W. Bush. But this isn't something that the Democrats were trying to reverse. They pushed these policies, these easy housing policies. They wanted these easy housing policies. And so Obama stabilized the economy. No, he didn't. We're still paying the price for the 2008 meltdown right now. $750 billion bank bailout. And then another $750 billion in stimulus spending. It's $1.5 trillion. This is the CARES Act before the CARES Act. Okay. And then quantitative easing. That's not stabilizing the economy. That's papering over the problem. He didn't fix it. And we're dealing with it now still. We're waiting. There's a reason we're spending $2 trillion in deficits right now. There's a reason there's a slow rejection of U.S. treasuries taking place the world over right now, because we didn't fix our problems in 2008. And let me tell you something about the two political parties. Barack Obama, and say I'm old. I remember I lost my job in 2008 in the mortgage industry when this happened. 18 years ago, a Republican and Democrat senator, both running for president, suspended their campaigns so they could both go back to Washington, D.C. and vote to bail out the banks. I stopped there to let that sink in for a minute.
Took over after even more trickle-down nonsense and a botched pandemic response from Trump.
Okay, the botched response from Trump, I don't know what the Democrat president would have done different. I don't want to get into that. The biggest issue that Trump had, the biggest mistake he made during the pandemic was the CARES Act. And in case you're wondering, do you think the economy, well, I guess let me ask you a couple. Do you think the economy would not have shut down under a Democrat president? Do you think we wouldn't have spent $2 trillion? Show me the Democrats. When we signed the CARES Act, show me which Democrats opposed the CARES Act and spoke out against spending this massive amount of money. Now, Biden took the heat for the inflation that was caused by the CARES Act that the President of the United States signed and that most Republicans also voted for. Okay? So I defended Biden during his presidency, saying that Biden's economic policies aren't great, but this massive inflation you're feeling right now, that is the $2 trillion that we dumped into the economy in 2020 or 2019 or whenever the CARES Act was signed. Okay. We dumped $2 trillion in the economy and then we flipped the switch and turned it back on. And lo and behold, we had massive inflation. Who could have seen that coming? So I defended Biden during those years on the high level of inflation that was, but at the end of the day, show me the Democrats who opposed it. There weren't any. In fact, the Democrats wanted to spend even more money.
But Democrats don't go big enough. They're still hamstrung by big money and corporations. So Americans don't feel the difference. Plus, to be fair,
it's because there's not really much of a difference.
It takes time to undo the damage Republicans have done. Meanwhile, Republicans have perfected the art of fooling a lot of Americans into believing that they are the party of working people and a strong economy. But there have been 5 economic recessions since 1980. It's no coincidence that all of them began under Republican.
You know what's funny? This is why I love statistics, right? And I'm not a whatever, man. I'm not partisan. I'm really not a partisan hack here, but it's just random, right? 2020, this is the pandemic. This recession, it's the pandemic. There was no recession. Look, we had an upward moving economy, and then the pandemic hit. And then you had this, and then you had this, where you spent $2 trillion. And remember, when it comes to economic growth, government spending counts towards GDP. So you spent $2 trillion. So you had this massive, and still going up, 2010. So this would have been 2000 to 2010. What was going on in 2010? Well, this is 2008. This is the housing crisis. Like I just said, look, it happened under George W. Bush. Don't get me wrong, but are we going to pretend like this housing crisis was created within a single administration? It looks like this recession came right at the end of a Democrat presidency. I don't know what was going on in like 2000, 2001. I don't remember back to what was the cause of it. Sometimes recessions just happen because we have business cycles. The 90s, the 80s. Look at the. Okay, this is GDP. Okay, look at the chart. Here's GDP in 1979. Right, this was the end of Carter. Here's the GDP at the end of Reagan's presidency. But look, there was a recession in there. How stupid is this? Look what the economy has done consistently under both people. Under both Republicans and Democrats, the GDP has just gone up. The economy has just grown consistently. Recessions happen. The problem that we have right now is that your purchasing power, the real pain you're feeling is the reduction in purchasing power based on printing. That's it. That's the pain. That's the actual economic pain that you're feeling. When they talk about this stuff. That's what's really going on. It's like this chart is like, oh, so we just had nonstop economic growth interrupted by a few recessions. But what are we talking about here?
Presidents. So how do we get out of this Republican doom loop?
It's a doom. Hold on.
Democrats.
Let me just pause this. This is what bothers me about progressives. Is like the economy is this horrible, terrible economy, and you're living in the worst. Look at GDP. If you're going to, he's the one who's using the GDP chart. Tell me how this is a doom loop. Tell me how that's an economic doom loop. Tell me where GDP, where the economy, so a recession is a contraction of the economy, right? So show me at the end of a Republican presidency where the economy was actually smaller than it was when they took power. Yeah, you can say the same thing about Democrats. All we've had in this country is economic growth. That's all we've had. The fact of the matter is that you're living in a pretty good frickin' time. No matter what the progressives try and tell you about how horrible the economy is, and now it's the progressives. Believe me, if a Republican wins in 2028, the Republicans will be telling you how terrible the economy is. The reality is not the propaganda that you're getting on social media. The reality is that the economy is actually doing pretty well under both presidents for forever. Like, really? I mean, yes, we have recessions. Yes, there's a business cycle. Yes, there are ups and downs in the economic system. This is going to be controversial. One of the big lies that you're being told is that housing is unaffordable and that single family homes are too expensive. They're not. They're not too expensive. The median family income in the United States, the median family income, when we're talking about single family homes, the median family income in the United States is $111,000 a year. $111,000 a year is the median family income. Now, what people will say is, well, you used to be able to buy a house on a single income. Yeah, but we told the market we didn't want to do that anymore. We wanted women in the workplace. We wanted 2-income households. We wanted to have it all. We're going to juggle the kids and the job and the whole 9 yards. That's what we decided we wanted. Right? This 2-income household thing wasn't forced upon us. You can say it was propagandized to us. You can say it was sold to us, whatever you want to say, but we chose it. So we're not both going to work and live in a 1,500 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. No, the average house is 1,000 square foot bigger than it was in the 80s, right? Why? But we have 2 incomes. I want a bigger house. Why am I working? Why are we both working and making all this money to buy a freaking $180,000 home? That's ridiculous. I want a bigger, nicer house. The average family income is right around 3.5 times the median price of the average family home, or the median price of a home, which is the exact purchasing ratio. You used to be able to do it with a single income. Then we decided we didn't want single income households anymore. And so now it takes a dual income household to buy a house. Who could have seen that coming? Crazy, I say. I have mistakenly done something here. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. What was the benefit of electing? All right, let me get back in here and look at the comment section. I'm sorry. I usually I usually get in here and take a look. Principal conservative disagrees with me wholehearted. Come up, principal. Let's have a conversation. Neoliberal capitalism is a house of cards. It requires paying for the working class every decade. Okay, I don't know what tax cuts for the rich are indecent. No, stealing money, no matter how much somebody has, is indecent. Taking somebody's property by force is indecent. Letting people keep what they've earned is not indecent. Sorry, Chip W. Hey, yo. There's a benefit of electing Trump. There's been no benefit of electing Trump. Higher inflation. Trump is the regime change president using... Yeah, he's the regime. There hasn't been a regime change president. Well, what do you disagree with, Principal? To be specific, and I'll see if I can answer your question. I'm happy to address you're always like a good dude in here, so I'm happy to address it. So tell me what you disagree with specifically, and I'll see what I can find for you. In support of my own... But we'll see. I'll pull up some numbers and we'll take a look. Why is this? Let me see what happens here if I do this. I'm going to do this one more time and then I'm going to be freaking done, I think. See, it does this. I don't want to do it that way. All right, never mind. So if you just spell it out, what you disagree with me wholeheartedly on. I'm guessing, I'm going to take a shot and assume that this came up during my housing. So we're going to median home price. Boink. We'll pull this up real quick. U.S. median home price, $436,000 in May of 2026. So represents a 1.2 increase from the previous year, despite a 0.9% rise in the number of homes on the market. This is interesting. So homes have actually, the inflation on homes is trailing the CPI, actually, which is pretty interesting. And it's going to go median family income, 2026. I don't know if I can get 2026's numbers. Let's see here. They don't like to print you got to kind of search for the median family income because they want to search on median income. That's the headline number they want to give you, which is like, I don't even know. I think it's like the median household income is the number they want to use, which I think is like $83,000. But we have to understand that the median household incomes include single parent, single households, 20-year-olds. It includes all those people. Family income, which is two people living in the same home who are related to each other, right? Typically a husband and wife, right? Living in the same home, both drawing an income, is significantly higher because you're cutting out a bunch of young single people who aren't married yet, right? And are young and are just starting out. You're cutting off these people who don't really need single family homes. Let me see here. Oh, here we go. So it does household. I don't want household. I want family. It's a very different number, and it's calculated and this comes from the Federal Reserve Board. But see how much harder it is to find that information. Let's see here. I'm gonna pull it up here. Oh, you know why I'm having a hard time with it? It's because I'm on stupid Bing, which sucks. Hold on. You can hate Google all you want, man, but freaking it works better. Median family income. Okay, the median family income in the United States is roughly $105,800, and this is based on what is this based on? I'm still looking for the date on this. I think that's the 2004 number. Median family income in the United States, Federal Reserve data. Here we go. This is from it's $105,800. That was in 2024. I can't remember where I saw the $111,000 number. I want to say it was in Forbes or something like that. So let's go back to 2024 and we'll use that number. The median family income, this is according to the Federal Reserve Board and the Census Bureau, is $105,000 a year. So like the economy doing well, housing prices, it's ridiculous because of inflation. So it's just a funny thing. So the inflation is, and I talked about that, like GDP includes government spending. So when the federal government is like, we're going to dump $2 trillion into the economy, it looks like economic growth, even though it's not real. So I can understand separating GDP from, if you took government spending out of GDP, it'd be a very different picture. Okay, I get that. But the idea that housing prices are just absolutely, they're just unaffordable. Single family homes are just unaffordable. It's not, the numbers don't support that. Like the raw numbers just don't support that. The median 50% of American families have a take home income are bringing over $105,000 a year. They talked about like people living paycheck to paycheck, and something where in the vicinity of 60% of the people who said they were living paycheck to paycheck had a household income over $140,000 a year. Dude, that's not inflation. That's bad decision making. You know what I mean? I mean, it's an unpopular thing to say, but because it's unpopular doesn't mean it's not true. That's just the way. That's, the numbers are the numbers. Let me get this out of here real quick. Oh, am I in the right place? Good. Okay, let me do this. Let me just do something real quick with look at my TikTok page up there for the whole world to see. That's the South Carolina Libertarian one anyway. I should put the comment section here. Can everybody see the comments? It's unpopular because it's untrue. Well, tell me how it's untrue. You can't just say it's untrue. I'm using the the median family income in the United States based on federal, the U.S. Census Bureau coming out. Then this is the St. Louis Fed releasing this information that the median family income is $105,000 a year, and the median home price is and this is 2 years ago. The median home price is like $420,000, and that's today. And I think it was lower than that in 2024. I could probably look that up too. That 3.5 times income is what they say you should be spending on your home. You can't buy it on a single income anymore. I'm not making that argument. I'm making the argument that we demanded 2-income households. Women wanted to go to work. We want women in the workplace. We want them to earn as much money as men. I'm not even saying that's wrong. What I'm saying is we signal to the market. I'm not buying a starter home. Why would I buy a $160,000 home? I'm not making $80,000 a year. My family makes $110,000 a year. Why would I buy a $180,000 home? And in that circumstance, why would I build one? So, like, you got to answer the question. You can't just say it's untrue. Why is it untrue? Nobody else is saying it because they're trying to sell something. Right, $160,000 homes barely exist anymore because nobody wants a $160,000 home. That's my point. If I have a median family income, if the median family income is $105,000 a year, what family that makes $105,000 a year wants to buy a $160,000 house? Nobody wants these houses. We're pretending like we want starter homes. We don't want starter homes. We want 2,500 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances. We asked for it. We asked for a dual income household. We demanded it as a women's liberation and feminism and equality and all these things. We said we're going to have 2-income. We're going to have 2-income households moving forward. And it became very evident that people wanted bigger, nicer, bigger houses. Why wouldn't you? Why would you want to go to work and almost double your average income but then live in the same standard of living? You wouldn't. It just doesn't make any sense. You do, principled, but you're in the minority. You're in the incredible minority, and the market doesn't cater to the minority. The market caters to mass demand, and mass demand is bigger homes. My old house, the house I bought right before this one, and we just moved in here a few months ago. My old house is what is now considered a starter home. One level, 1,600 square feet, and it's a small starter home. One level, right around 1,600 square feet, 3 bedrooms with an office and 2 bathrooms, including a small master bath. That's your new starter home, dude, for a young family. You get 2 27-year-olds, or a 27-year-old and a 30-year-old. They both make $65,000, $70,000 a year. These two people aren't buying a $160,000 house. They want a $300,000 home. That's what they want. They don't want the house I lived in that my father bought when I was growing up as a blue-collar electrician working for the union in an oil refinery, making really good money for the era. We lived in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. We were a family of 5 in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1,000 square foot home. Who's buying that house? Who's raising kids in that house today? Nobody. Why would they build that house that nobody's going to want to buy? But I'm not excluding single income households. I'm not excluding. If you're single and you want to buy a house, that's great. You're kind of an anomalous. Is that the right word? You're kind of an anomaly. Why would I want to? I get what you're saying. That you'd love to buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house as a single person. That's going to be a lot harder to find. Most people who are buying homes are families. That's the broad market for a house. The broad market for a house is a family. And most families don't want to buy a small house. So the market isn't going to cater to you. It's going to be a lot harder for you to find what you want. Your home is probably a townhouse. I don't know what your income is, and it's none of my business. But your home is probably a townhouse, and you're probably not going to get to live close to the city center or in a premium suburb, or in a good school district or whatever. Your first home is going to be a condo or a townhouse. It's not going to be a single family home anymore. That's not how we do things. I'm not purposely excluding single income households. I'm saying that that's not the predominant market in single family homes. Isn't single people. It's families. It's right there in the name. Single family homes. So I'm not saying I agree with it or disagree. I'm not assigning a value to it as a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that's the reality. So yes, you can't buy, it's very, very difficult now to buy a home on a single income. It just is, because that is what the market is demanding. A POS 2,000 square foot house is $400,000. Where? My last house sold for just over $300,000. I had almost an acre, an in-ground pool, fully paid off solar panels, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, 3 bedrooms, an office, and 2 bathrooms. And that house sold for right around $300,000. I don't know what to tell you, man. Tucson. Let's see. Tucson. Tucson, Arizona. I don't know what the cost of living in Tucson is. I'm not familiar with the market out west. I remember looking at houses in like Phoenix, and I was like, one of the reasons we moved to South Carolina is because one of the reasons was it was just cheaper to live here. It's cheaper to buy a home here than it was out in Arizona. I was like, I don't want to spend $400,000 on a house in Phoenix or in one of the Mesa Verde or one of the suburbs of Phoenix, living in a lot that's the size of a postage stamp. I just didn't like the housing market out there. So, but let's take a look at Tucson here. 2 beds, 2 bath, 1,500 square feet, $400,000. Golly, get out of Arizona. Let's see. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1,873 square feet, $350,000. Can you guys see these? Okay. 3 beds, 2.5 baths. Well, a lot of this is going to be pretty neighborhood dependent. It feels like, right? So you got 1,800 square feet for $350,000, and then you've got 2,000 square feet for $580,000. So, and like I said, I'm not familiar with the market out there. This looks like crap. 3 bed, 2 bath, 1,000 square feet. There's your starter house, by the way. This is your starter house. Right here, $275,000. This is your starter home in Tucson. This is what a starter house is. 1,000 square feet. Right? This is the house I grew. This is roughly the size of the house I grew up in. It's bigger. It's bigger than the house I grew up in, and it has 2 bathrooms and an extra bedroom. I grew up in a 2-bed, 1-bath, 990 square feet. That's the house I grew up in. My dad was a blue-collar electrician, worked for the union. This is a starter home. Nobody fucking wants to buy this house, dude. Families don't want to buy this house. You know what I mean? This is the problem. Let's see here. $350,000. 4 beds, 2 baths, 18 for $350,000. There's your starter home. $850,000, $495,000. This looks like a huge outbuilding. 4 beds, 2.5 baths, 2,300 square feet, $475,000. Is that a starter home in your mind? Is this a POS house? Let's take a look at this POS house. 2,300 square foot house. Doesn't look like a POS. I mean, it's almost 500, so I'll give you that. This looks like a very nice home. Definitely not a starter, right? This is not a starter home. This is a mid-career home. Is it not? This is going to be marketed to people who make $40,000 to $45,000, or who are 40 to 45 years old, got teenagers maybe, been at their careers for 15, 20 years. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. And I don't know the market. And so I don't have time to like go through the map and all that stuff. But see how you're putting your preferences in? It needs to be north of here or east of there. It needs this. It needs that. I don't want to live in this neighborhood, in that neighborhood. It's not that the houses aren't there. It's that you don't want to live in the houses that are available. That's also part of it. The house I grew up in was not in a great neighborhood. I didn't go to a great school. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know, the preference, and it's okay. It's my message. My point is that it's okay to have these higher preferences. It's okay to have to demand a higher standard of living. That's okay to have more expensive taste than your parents had. But don't complain about not being able to have what your parents had because you don't want what they wanted. You weren't willing to live the way they lived. You would never go back. I wish I would share my, you know what, you know my whole name anyway. Let me just see if I can pull my house. I could probably literally pull up the house I grew up in. Let me see here. And you guys, I'll dox but I don't live anywhere near it anymore. So it's not really, right? It's not really doxing me, is it? 20. Let's see if it's on here. Shit, you probably still buy this house for $100,000. Oh, here we go. This is it. Let me pull this bad boy up. This is the house I grew up in. Let me blow this up for you guys. Yeet. That's the house I grew up in. It's about 900. This top floor here is just an unusable attic. This is the living room. Back here is the kitchen. There's a staircase here. So that's like a hall window. Bathrooms back here. It's an upper level landing. There's nothing there. Then there's bathroom. There's a bedroom. And then these two windows are the other bedroom. Which you could potentially divide that into two. You could potentially divide that into two very small bedrooms. But we wouldn't have had a door, right? So there's only the one door. So that's the house. And let's see. We'll scroll. There's the backyard. Kitchen. You'll notice there's no dishwasher. Still. This is the dining room. We did not have central air. When I was growing up, we had one of the biggest, like most luxurious purchases we made was buying a big air conditioner to put in this window. Oh, that was such a piece of luxury. This is the bathroom, the only bathroom in the house. Yeah, this brings back some memories. So this is the big bedroom. And this is the little bedroom. That's it. That's the house. That's the house I grew up in. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, about 1,000 square feet. On a single income, an income and a half. My mom works in part-time jobs. That's the boom days of the late 70s and early 80s. These are the houses that blue collar boomers were buying. You're being sold a lot. Canton, Ohio is a dive, dude. Nobody wanted to live in that town. It was just not an expensive, prestigious place to live. Canton, Ohio, nobody wants to live there. You understand? So like when I point out this house and I say, this is the house I grew up in, this is the house my blue collar dad could afford growing up. I'm not saying like, but we lived, we're Manhattan adjacent. This isn't a crappy area. Look how close to the house next to us is. We sided this house, by the way. That siding is from like 1980 something. We put that on. The house when we bought it was all chipped up with nasty blue paint. And there was a derelict garage in the back that we had to tear down. But that's where I grew up. And that's what your boomer blue collar parents could afford. That's the life they live. It's like to some extent you're being sold a lie about what the economy that your parents grew up in. You're kind of being sold a little bit of a lie here. I was watching like the Nate Bargatze thing, and he was talking about how like when you're first born, your first kid, you're the oldest child, you show up and it's like your parents are broke. You're like, you don't even know if you should be here yet. And he's like, by the time the youngest child is born, your parents are trillionaires. They live in a house you never got to see. Yeah, it's like you make more money as you age. But the smart way to have kids is when you're young. And it's okay to like not have everything. And by the way, that house didn't have central air conditioning. Obviously, we didn't have internet. When things were going well, we had cable. Our annual family vacation, we took one vacation a year. We drove 2 hours to Sandusky, Ohio. We went to Cedar Point. We spent a week up there at at a hotel. That was our annual family vacation. And we took one a year. Like that was the life. But they're not lying. That's my lived experience. But based on what my father did for a living and where we lived, I think it's a very average blue collar experience from, 40 plus years ago. So this idea that you could buy, like, I think that people look at homes that people have now and they're like, you could have bought that house on a single income back then. It's not the case. And that house is available. I think you could buy it for like $75,000. I don't know what we paid for it. I have no idea. I was a little kid when I was 5 years old. We moved in there. But you can buy it now for 70. Who wants to go? Nobody wants that house. So that's why they don't build them. Oh, Niles, Ohio. That's funny. Oh man. I think it was, the last time I had looked at it, sometimes I just like to, walk down memory lane. I've looked at it before. It was for rent for like $900. See, that's the other thing about rent, right? That house was for rent for like $900 a month. Let me just pull the house back up here. I don't think it's for sale, but it has a, oh, not NI. Come on. Please. Come on. I can't type. There we go. Price estimated value is 52 to 77. It's listed here as 8. I've seen it as much as 900 square feet. This has it listed at 880 square feet. It was sold on January 6, 2023 for $37,500. And the pictures I'm seeing now, I think are old photos. But last time I looked at it, it was a rental property and it was updated. So it has been like completely remodeled inside. It's like the floors have all been redone. It's been repainted. And so I think that's where that new Zestimate, that new whatever is coming. Bank owned, sells as is. Seller will make no repairs. Blah, 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 blah. Has most updated windows. Modern kitchen. What? Is this the modern kitchen? They're just showing you a picture of the sink. There's no dishwasher. Like there's nothing here. So you're looking at this right here at this bottom corner. Sorry, I don't have it pulled up. Let me get it up here. So right here at this lower right-hand corner or left-hand, depending on how you look, where that doorway is, that's where the stove would go, and then there's nothing else there. On the other side of the kitchen is the stairway that goes out into the basement. So it's pretty funny to me that like people, I'm just trying to give you it's one of those deals where it's like what am I trying to say here? I'm just trying to give you a dose of reality. I guess that's the point. Is I'm trying to give you a little dose of reality on when they tell you like how life used to be and how great things used to be. I'm just trying to give you a little dose of reality, what it actually looked like back in the day, back in the good old days, if you will. Let's see. So the principle was asked what the average house price was in 2010 versus now. I don't know. Let me see. Median family income in here in 2010. Well, let's do both things though. Principled, if we're going to do it. I don't know if you're still in here or not. The average median family income in 2010 was $60,000. Right? But that house was $50,000. What do you mean, Phil? Help me out with that. What do you mean it was $50,000? What does that have to do with anything? Anyway, median family income in 2010 was $60,000. So what was the median home price by? Let's get into. So let's go median home price by year. So we get a nice little chart on it. Here we go. So in 2010, $224,000. So it's like, you know what I mean? Do you get what I'm saying? We're not in this scenario where home prices have massively outpaced family income. So you look at income. This is the income median price. This is the median sales price. Let me get this up on the screen. Come on, Brian, do a better job with this. Why am I not seeing it? Hold on. Did I get rid of display capture? Hold on. Let me bring these charts up real quick. Let's do this. Nope. Get the hell. Here. Nope. Here. Give me a second. I got to reset this for some reason. I got it off the freaking deal. There we go. All right. So I'll bring this up so you guys can see it. Let me blow this up. Boom. I'll bring this chart up so you can see it. Okay. So this is median. We'll just expand it to a little bit more recently. Somebody asked about like from 2010, essentially. So this is the median sales price of a home, right? So in 2010, the median sales price of a home was $224,000. Okay. And the median family income in 2010 was 60 grand. Today, the median family income in 2024 is $105,000. Okay. And the median sales price of a home in 2024 is $415,000. You're right there. It's a little high. It's a little high, but it's not like this. Oh my God, nobody can buy a house. You know what I'm saying? So like there is this idea that wages have been so stagnant and everything's just gotten so expensive. And I'm a guy who will admit my perspective is probably a little skewed because of my age and where I'm at in life. But the numbers are the numbers. And what we don't think about is the fact that how much money are you spending on all of your subscriptions and all of your data plans and all of your internet access and all those different things. I guarantee you're going out more to eat than I did when I was a kid. I guarantee it. I just know it to be true. We don't consider all those inflationary things. We had one TV in my house the whole time. Like I moved out, we still only had one TV in the house. You know what I mean? And maybe we had cable. And then otherwise we'd have bunny ears. Who does that anymore? Who has one TV in their house? I didn't have a computer in the house till I was in high school. Now I'm old. I understand the technological differences. But now how many computers do you have in your house? How many have you bought? How many cell phones, $1,000 handheld devices do you own? And how often do you replace them? Like we don't want to talk about all the other things that are making it harder for you to function and what the actual necessity of those things are. Like nobody wants to talk about that. That's unpopular. It's not going to win you an election, right? To point at people and go, oh, some of this is your fault. That's not popular. You're not going to win. Like you're not going to win an election telling people that. Let's just do median income. We did median family. Let's see. We'll just go with median individual income. In 2010, the median individual income was $36,000. It's $45,000 now. That's terrible. And that's terrible. I'll be honest with you. That I expected to be better. Real median personal income. Well, that's median. So I think, forgive me if I'm wrong on this, but I think household income is better because that would include all households. I don't like median income for a couple of reasons. Predominantly because median income is going to include every single person that's not in their own household. It's every single teenager who's working, every single part-timer in college, all those people are going to be included. I like household income because that would include single income households, but not like kids in the income perspective, right? Does that make sense? If you think that's unfair, that's, hit me up in the comments, but I think that's a better. So median income in 2010, $68,000 today. 2024, $83,000. That's a single person's income. If you go 3.5 times, that's the kind of like the recommended ratio of income to home price, right? So let's take a bear with me as usual. You know what I could do is I could do this. Nope, that doesn't work. God dang. All right, so 83,000 times 3.5. So the recommendation would be for you to spend right around $300,000 on a home. Your starter home is a townhouse now. That's your starter home. Your starter home isn't a standalone single family house anymore. It's a townhome. I don't know what to tell you. So Phil says, yeah, both of us go to work and come home. You've still never bought. Phil, I don't want to be a jerk. I don't want you to But are you guys earning the median family income? I'm assuming you say we, so I'm assuming that means you're married. Are you earning at or near if you include kids, one parent is working just to pay for childcare? What does this mean, principal? No, it's individual, real. What do you mean? One parent is working just to pay childcare. Let's say you're spending $3,000 a month on childcare, right? Let's say you're spending $3,000. Then quit the job. What are you doing? Keep the kids home, I guess. Make home cooked meals. I don't. That's the problem. There's no. So you're saying that the mom or the dad, whoever, one of the people working in the house is only making $30,000 a year when the median family income is $105,000. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how to answer that question. 83K, one working, one staying home. 83K, one working, one staying home. 83K is the median household income. This is going to include every single person who has a household who is not married and is single and living by it includes those numbers. Every college kid who's working part-time is a household. Well, if they have their own place, right? Every 22-year-old fresh out of college starting their first job is a household, right? So you have to understand what household income, these aren't all families. Household income, it's going to include retirees in household income, right? So household income, that's why I use median family income as a much, much more accurate picture of what a family, husband, wife, kid or two, right? The average family is earning, or the median family is earning. This isn't just families. These are retirees. These are single people. These are divorced single moms. There's a whole, you know what I mean? Median family income is the best number. It's the best number to use for what the cost of living is today. Individual income is going to include kids. It's going to include 16 and 17-year-olds, dude, making $9 an hour who live with their parents. It's going to include people who are semi-retired Walmart greeters who are just working to keep themselves busy. The best unit of measure when you're talking about cost of living, in particular when you're having a conversation about the cost of a single family home, is median family income. That is the most accurate comparison between what's being earned and what these things cost. It's like saying the average rent in New York City is X and minimum wage is this. And so a person earning minimum wage can't live in the median, in the average cost of an apartment in the most expensive place to live. Those numbers. The most accurate way to measure the cost of housing against a family's standard of living is to use family income against single family homes. That's the most accurate. That's the most fair comparison, is the medians of those two things. What I was trying to say is we are a family of four making $83,000 a year. And Phil, I don't know how old you are, so I'm not trying to be a dick here. So how old are you? Do you mind sharing that? And you didn't have to share your income. I was going to ask, but I didn't want to ask you that question. So you're 35. Okay. Let's see. Median income by age. Median income. So you both work. And so you're both in that 40, or you're both kind of in that $40,000 a year range. You're at the lower end of the economic, I don't know what to tell you, and I'm not trying to be a jerk here. Median individual income. I wanted to say it was $40,000 or something like that. So the median individual income in the United States for 2025 is estimated at $53,000. That's the median individual income. So you're in the bottom 50% of income earners. And you and your wife are both in the bottom 50% of income earners at 35 years old. I don't know what you do for a living. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be a jerk here. It's like, I'm not trying to take a dump on you. At 35 years old, I mean, if you and your wife both made 50 grand, you'd be at $100,000. 50 grand, I just don't feel like that's a hard salary to get to. Only one of you works. Oh, well, yeah, you're not typical. You're an atypical family. And $83,000 is great. You're doing great. You're doing fine. You're right in the median of individual income at 35 years old. You're doing great. You've chosen a harder path. Do you have kids? You have kids. You're a family of 4. You've chosen a harder financial path, but I think you're making the right call. Like, can I make the misogynist assumption that you're the one who works and your wife stays home? And I say that I'm the stay-at-home parent in my family now. You're making a harder choice, but in the long run, your kids and your family are probably going to be better off. You stay at home. See, look what's happened. Look at how progressive the two of us are. Two stay-at-home dads cracking it up or chopping it up here. $83,000 a year is a respectable single income. Your wife's young. I'm assuming she's around your age or younger. It's going to get better. I don't know what to tell you. You're going to be broke for a while. The starter home for you is a townhouse at somewhere in the $250,000 range. That's what you can afford. They're not building homes for single income families anymore. They're just not, because that's not what most people want. The market isn't sending the signal that that's what they want in big numbers. So that sucks. But I think it's good. I think it's cool that you're staying home. I'm a stay-at-home. I too am a stay-at-home parent, and we're in a very different financial situation. You know, our 3 youngest are raised and out of the house. We adopted. We essentially owned our prior home free and clear. So I'm 50 years old. I'm 15 years older than you. You'll be surprised where you're going to be at in 15 years, my friend. And you'll be fine. I think you're making a great choice. And, keep your head up. The struggle is real. I get it. Guys, I've been on for a minute here, an hour and a half. Goodness gracious. I'm kind of ticked. I'm going to keep working on it, though. I'm not going to give up and go anywhere. But I'm going to bail. Thank you all for being here. I'll try and come back on this evening. Watch my live content today. I will be posting throughout the day. Can I still do this? Nope, can't do that. I can do this, though. We'll do one of those. Thank you very much. And can I still do one of these? Nope. Okay. Guys, I appreciate your time. Thank you all for hanging out. I enjoyed the conversation, and I'll be back this evening if you want to discuss this up further. Have a good one.